Well, hello everybody. I'm Gary from Lantana Removal, Queensland, 0449 986 880, and I'm here with you again, talking to our Prime Minister, Mr Scott Morrison, and also our Queensland and New South Wales Premiers. So basically, we established that one plant in a season equals 400 new plants. Okay. If you add water, so it lives in a creek or it lives on a watercourse or it lives somewhere where it's got access to water, like on the side of a road, then one plant equals 3,600 new plants minimum in a year. Okay, so what happens is say you've got a wet area like this here, as it stands with our infestations as they are, where councils are leaving them run in the bottom of a valley or in the bottom of a watercourse and things like that, where we have enormous infestations within Queensland, New South Wales. But what happens is the birds pick up the seeds. Water moves this material by the largest amount, and then the birds pick up the seeds and they fly it up to the top of the hills, okay, up top of the mountains in the national parks and state forests and places like that. Because water is the greatest spreader of this material, okay, and water also increases its output by exponentially, we end up with a situation that once it gets up into this terrain, which it's been there for a long time now, thanks to the councils and government departments, it's free to then travel down the slopes, down into the watercourses, okay, and bridge all of the gap in between these areas, okay. So that's one of the major changing points within our system, our ecology, that the governments have never been moved to be bothered to figure this out, and they don't understand why I say that we have such massive problems coming in the very, very near future. Within the next couple of years, I'll just be keeping on making videos, but by that time we'll be filming what was now and what it will be in 2 years' time, and that we'll be changing governments within that time frame. So where we also then have roads, okay, so you have roads coming through, right, and the roads then have the hard shoulders of the roads. You have all of the drainage ditches off the sides of these roads, and right on the tops of these areas here you have very large infestations of lantana. These roads are often very steep, and then that creates the on-flow effect of spreading the material even worse, again at the high rates of these infestations. Now my question to our Prime Minister, Mr Morrison, is what is he going to do about the illegal situation with the councils all across our nation having let lantana go for the last 20-30 years, even though it was illegal for them to do so, and it was only a recent thing that the state governments changed the legislation to call it low risk. How do you come up with that it's low risk when you have those sorts of growth rates? Okay, you have a lethal plant that's toxic to human and animal, and it covers 10 million hectares. In the last 10 years, they doubled the actual level from 5 million hectares to 10 million hectares. What is going to happen in the next ones, now that they have it growing in these areas, right? Councils didn't have the levels of infestations that they have in the bottoms of watercourses and drainage ditches. You know, that's why I said to Malcolm Turnbull, please come up here and I'll drive you around. Anastasia Palaszczuk and the New South Wales Premier, and I'll drive you around, I'll show you why everything has changed and why we are in a catastrophic situation with the expansion of this material. The Main Roads Department acts illegally in allowing the material to stay there. Okay, so what, he's going to change the law and remove and make it legal to release this material to the environment? Okay, if you're not eradicating the material, you're releasing it to the environment. And with these growth rates and the staggering levels of these infestations throughout Queensland and New South Wales, we have some very serious issues ahead of us that must be dealt with. And we must change the council's policies and attitudes. It's no longer good enough for them to just give double dutch and say, well, you know what, We have people who work for us and will do something, next lot of grants or monies that come up. There is no money comes up. There is no policies in place to deal with these things. We are just left with the outcomes of these things. Now we're going to have a situation where we already have it, where people's property values are dropping to half. Okay, so you have $1 million property and it's selling for $500,000 because of the levels of infestations on them. But the greatest holders of all these materials are government departments. That's why we've got the law was changed secretly by the state government. That's why we have these secret policy changes that have just been announced now with Boona and those things in the clearing laws. You know, all of these things are putting not only our economy but also our environment at great risk. And there's nobody has come to us and decided to deal with how they're going to do this. While you allow councils to undermine every single thing that was ever done with Lantana, the growth of this material on their lands is now that great that none of the councils will tackle it. And it won't matter how much money you give them, they will not spend money on it. They'll take the money, but they just won't spend it on the problem. This material lines roads all around our nation, just absolutely lines the sides of the roads and on high country, which is having that material flood down straight off that into properties and continue infesting further downstream. These things can't be hidden from Mr Morrison. They cannot be something that we keep shying away from, that you keep pretending doesn't exist. The fact that your councils across the nation have been stabbing everybody in the back, all of our children, the whole lot of us, changing laws and regulations to say, well, we can't fix that problem, we're just going to run away from it. But they don't run away. We're left with the cost of that. It's tearing up our land values. You know, the Premiers of Queensland and New South Wales have been aware of this exactly the same as the federal government for the last 10 months. And yet not one movement forward has been acted on any part of it other than to gift some more gifts to the councils, to the buddies, while they knowingly did the wrong thing. It's taken a long while to nail their feet down to the ground to figure out exactly how they're eluding, how they're eluding actually doing the work. Illegally well, they're not getting out of the work, they just aren't doing the work. Their legal obligation is to do the work. It's not the public's fault that the materials are so far out of control. If they had been doing their jobs, the jobs that they were collecting money for, they've been collecting money the whole time through this. It is such an illegal situation, and yet you pretend it doesn't exist. You hope it goes away somewhere along the line. But the levels of this material pouring down those streets and down into those watercourses are at such an alarming rate that the filming of this before the next elections and elections after that are going to mean that there's going to be some very serious changes to the Australian landscape, the political landscape. Because we're going to have people that will stand up and do something about this material and do it properly. We're the only ones who can eradicate those materials off the slopes that they have to be gotten rid of first. Out of those watercourses. You cannot possibly pretend it's not an issue the size that it is. Just because you listen to the scientists say, oh no, we can't imagine a workforce ever that productive or that good, so therefore nothing can be done, which is where we are under your policies, under your government leadership. We're left with no leadership at all, dealing with Lantana and the other weeds. We have hundreds of millions of animals dead or homeless as a result of these policies. Well, no policies. It's time to come clean and actually deal with these issues and actually start to go through neighbourhoods and states and clean this stuff up. To put these programs in place and actually go after this material to the end result of reaching the growth rate. Until we have policies in place that reach the growth rate of this material, you're condemning our children to a life of horror. On the growth levels of this material, where it exists now, it's not long before we're going to have have trouble feeding our country. We already have the droughts and the floods, and then we're going to have the rest of this stuff with this material completely choking out agricultural farming. So, are you going to uphold the law? Or are you going to wimp out and allow this to be swept under the carpet? Well, it can't be swept under the carpet because we'll just keep making films of this material forever. The growth rate on the material means that this is only ever going to get worse politically. It's never going to get better. There's that many people now flying drones and taking footage of this material for us and then posting it, that this is already out of control. Politically, it's going to be a nightmare in the next couple of years, just continuously growing and growing. And I don't care if it takes 10 years, I don't care if it takes 20 years. It will get dealt with, that's for sure. But whether the people currently around are going to know anything other than they will be blamed for what they haven't done. This information has been to the federal government for the last 10 months. So how come it hasn't been acted on? How come the councils have knowingly been doing this for so many years and the state government's been turning a blind eye to it? Queensland Premier, how come? We've got the Water Board with absolutely massive infestations, insane infestations. They equal the National Parks and Wildlife infestations. And yet we don't have money for them to clean up their mess, according to them. The South East Queensland Water Board wrote to me just the other day and said, we've got 4 places under operations. They've got 1,000 places that need operations. And they've only listed that in a 10-year cycle, they've got 4 places listed across the whole entire state. And yet they have thousands upon thousands of acres out at Dundas that is just wall to wall. It's 60 to 80% of the actual vegetation on the land. 60 to 80% of it is Lantana. And being released to the environment every single day. Now we have cattle being put on those environments to eat the Lantana and die. How does this happen under your government? Is there no accountability at all at a state or federal level at all? And then is there no accountability or holding these councils to do their legal obligations? Who is it that actually runs this country? I'm starting to wonder, because we get $440 million gifted to the mates at the Barrier Reef, and yet all of the problems with the Barrier Reef come off land. Why the hell are we giving your mates that much money when these issues get nothing? Well, I hope to hear from you very soon. These videos are going to get much worse, because next week we'll be standing in front of the Lantana in a few of those hotspots, and within another couple of weeks those hotspots will be looking very flash at this time of year. So we will see, we'll see if we can't scare up a few of those dead cattle for you out there around that area too, and see how you go with that. It needs to be dealt with. It can't be hidden from. It's that bad an issue, and our children's future is being stolen from them. These things will be remembered as to the people who stood up like us, and the people who went and hid in a corner and pretend it doesn't exist. But you can't hide from a continuous timeline. That's the trouble. It's already been 10 months. So it shows where the government stands on these things. But it's only been a week, 2 weeks since it has been finally clarified of exactly how illegal all of those government departments and the councils have been. They can't release Lantana to the environment. It has to be eradicated. Just because the state government secretly took eradicate out of the wording and called it low risk because they've lost control of it to the levels they have. But look at that alone. They've lost controls of it to the level it has, and they've got no policies in place to meet the growth level. So our state government has just abandoned us. The New South Wales government has just abandoned us. That's a factual situation, and the councils have been allowed to go along with them. Wow. What is the future? Is there anybody running the country? I know there are people picking up the checks for it, but they're certainly not doing anything about situations like this. properties being sold for half of their value. There will be properties very soon that are more expensive to clean off than what they are, the property value is. What's going to happen then? With those growth rates, what happens? What happens as it expands even further? So you're not planning to stop it at 10 million, you're not planning that. What, will you stop it at 20 million? When will you try and stop it? Well, I look forward to hearing your response. I look forward to seeing some changes, both state, federal and council, and see if we can't get some people to act according to the law and meet their obligations and stop this material from spreading. At least meet the growth rate of the material. Thank you. I'm Gary from Lantana Removal, Queensland. We operate out of Narangba. So please give us a call if you've got any problems, and have a chat to the Prime Minister and the Premiers and ask the questions. Ask the questions of the councils. They can't legally leave the material there. Then how are they leaving it on the footpaths where it has that huge access to water and in all the waterways? They're operating illegally. Surely they are bound by the same laws. The courts, the whole system says they are bound by those laws, and yet they continue to just ignore them. You know, we can't, as the people of a country, we can't allow that to happen, because that really sets a precedence. What other government agency, government department, government starts to decide what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, no matter what the legal responsibilities are? It's a very scary place if we don't stand up and care about the ecology and care about the environment and care about our children, because these guys don't. I hope you vote on that on the next election. I really, really do. Because we need some decent leadership. We need some people who are going to get this stuff dealt with. Going to stand up and bother to be counted. Anyway, I'm Gary. Thank you very much for popping in. Look out for the next lot of videos. Hopefully we get some sort of response. I've got to do a video on some of those other responses we have. And Moreton Bay Regional Council said that they're finally going to respond officially, but they are very unhappy people. So we'll see what comes back from them, and that'll be another video on its own. Bye bye.